Mhm.
Okay. So welcome in tonight, guys. You're gonna have to excuse my disgustingness. I
You look
am not
fine.
I'm looking a little haggard, but that's okay. Um, what I want to do tonight is first thing I know how many of you attended Marie Hess yesterday?
Yep.
Raise your hand if you did. Okay. So what I want to do first is talk about how that went. If you guys have any questions regarding stuff that came through or questions on just mediumship in general, Kathy and I have been involved in the community, for a very long time, and we had to learn the ins and outs of mediumship and how that channel worked and the energy surrounding that, how the ego and the interpretation is involved. So I want to touch base on that and see if you guys have any questions regarding that type of thing. And, like I said, Kathy and I have been involved in that part of the community for about 7 years. Um, we're not mediums. We didn't go into mediumship development. I was not pulled in that way. Um, but we all have mediumship within us because we're all spirit inside of us. We all have those abilities. It's the difference is like somebody that gets on a bike and can immediately ride free and clear and smooth versus somebody that has to develop the skills to ride a bike. So a lot of times, like for me, it was about I wanted to develop and open my awareness so that I could communicate with Lee offhandedly with that. Sometimes I know when Sophie is communicating with me. I know when Kat's son is communicating with me. Like I told you guys before, Parker popped in like loud and clear with me when he took me into the Lego castle that one night. So don't be surprised if as you're opening up your awareness to your own kiddo that, Leaf likes to make the rounds too. So how many of you here have had awareness of Leaf visiting with you or communicating with you? I mean, the kid he's an attention whore. Um, but he also helped, he works with me on that side to, I believe, help open up y'all's awareness because sometimes it's easier for you to recognize, say, Leaf or Sophie or somebody rather than your own child because your ego, you're more objective, right? You're more objective when it's somebody else's kid. So your ego won't be so loud with somebody else's child. I think there was somebody in the group said the other day, I haven't been in the big group really. I feel so bad. I haven't hardly been in any group, either of the groups this week. But she said that her son rarely visits her, but she knows when Leaf is visiting her. And I haven't had time to feel that yet, but her son is visiting and communicating with her. But because she's not objective, her ego probably writes it off and discounts it. But with Leaf, her ego doesn't do that. She's just like, oh, hi, Leaf. So that is part of what's really good about getting to know other people's kids too, because sometimes you'll be more objective with them and you won't have the ego causing you doubt and all of that stuff. So I want to start. Do any of you guys have questions about mediumship, how that works, what it looks like, what the energy is? I know a question came up yesterday that Kathy fielded about where ego's involved. And so we can talk about that if you want to more in depth. I'm sure Kathy and I are in alignment with both of our perspectives on that. So I'm sure she did a great job at it. But it is something that does come up. So if you have questions about that, that's something we can discuss tonight. We're also going to make sure if you have not signed up to get in on the Kiddo and Spirit gift exchange, we're gonna match everybody tomorrow. So make sure you go on tonight. It's pinned in the featured post. Make sure you go on tonight and get your kiddo and yourself entered into that because Kathy tomorrow is gonna ask for addresses. So she'll do a post with addresses. So I wanted to get that out before I forget it because I'm not like it took me and Kat 15 minutes to make a bed yesterday because we were both like, what do we do? I mean, the brain is not working correctly at this point. So yeah, so that's where we're gonna start. Does anybody have questions about mediumship, how it works, how the energy exchange works, what energy you bring to it, what energy the medium brings to it? where the ego gets involved, what interpretation of things look like. Does anybody have questions?
I don't have a question. Just a
Okay.
comment.
Yeah.
So I'm one of these kind of people like who was really skeptical of this stuff, and I never, like I
I
really
know you are. I know
I
you.
and I've had three, well, four, I guess, readings. One, two with one person, and then one with Rachel, and one with somebody else that I was on. And I don't even know who she was. It was just a group kind of a thing.
A
And
group.
I was
Yeah.
just, I could not believe how accurate some of the stuff was. Like it was just
Yeah.
astounding to me. And if you'd have told me that before, I would have said, yeah, yeah, right. There's just coincidence, or they're just guessing or fishing, or and I was
Mhm.
just honestly just like it just astonished me. That you
Yeah.
could
And you know,
they would actually come up with names of people and pets that they would have never been able to look up on Facebook or obituary or anything.
no, no. And you know, it's a common thing. It's a common misconception with, so two things on that, Lynn. It's a common misconception, number one, that mediums online are going to look you up. The mediums that are trusted mediums, especially mediums that we recommend, they have, they don't need to look you up. They're always going to have so much information that spirit brings them that's not, it can't even be found online, that even if they were to look you up, spirit's not going to bring that through. They're going to bring through details like you're saying, Lynn, evidence mediumship, right? And it's okay to be a healthy skeptic. That allows you to go in and you know, that is part of the healing process. It's part of the ego taming process. The other thing is, you guys, and this doesn't just go with mediumship. This goes with opening your awareness, period, with your communication with your kids. There is no such thing as a coincidence. That is the human ego. That's the word for the human ego, because ego does not understand spirit. It doesn't understand anything. It can't use the five senses to explain. Ego doesn't get that. And so humans, led by ego, came up with the word coincidence, right? To to have a word to articulate what can't be explained, basically. You know, really think about the word coincidence. Like, there's not really it's basically like that which can't be explained, right? Same as serendipity or synchronicity. So
Um,
always,
Hey, Nikki,
yeah,
I
yeah,
think wasn't it Einstein that said something about coincidence is God's way of keeping hidden or something like that, or I can't remember
yeah,
what he said about it, but
yeah, I think so. And he's literally saying, you know, in with different verbiage, that it is the key to spirit. Like, it is the key to the sixth sense. Like, that's, we all have that within us, right? Um, Another thing is you guys don't have to go into mediumship development. If you're pulled that direction, that's awesome. But to have awareness of your children and to communicate with your children, you do not have to become a developed medium. Okay. Like when Rachel or when Kat reads, it, it when they read, or even Marie, any of them, when they're speaking with spirit, they're objective, right? So they get the information coming in. Kat likes to say they're the hose, and the information coming through is the water, right? They're just the channel, is all they are. So, like, and Rachel and I have discussed this, when, like, Rachel's relationship with Perry is the exact same as your relationship with your kids or my relationship with Lee. We have to learn a certain type of awareness and discernment with our children. Whereas when she's reading for somebody else that's a complete stranger, it seems really profound and in depth, but that's because she's an objective channel at that point. I've seen a lot of parents in the bereaved community, they hop into mediumship development because they think that it's going to enhance their communication. But what they don't understand is the enhanced, like, really vivid communication like that is going to be with an objective stranger, because you've known your child in physical. So the discernment comes, and the ego pops in a lot more, you know what I mean, with your own kid. So you don't have to become a developed medium. There's nothing wrong with taking those classes, because they absolutely help to open up your awareness. I mean, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because that's the key to the communication. um, the other part of that, though, is taming the ego, so that you know when your child is speaking to you. um, learning your truth about afterlife and what physical death is, and then understanding how mediumship works. So and Lynn, like healthy skepticism is great. It's great. It lends you as an objective observer because you may get information in a reading that isn't happening in real time. I'll give you an example of that. So when was it? 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. Um, Rachel had reached out to me and she said, and Tom and I have been together 8 years. We've both been married. We don't want to be married again. Like, I don't even believe in the sanctity of marriage. I don't need the government up in my shit. But I learned my lesson the first time with that. But so Rachel had messaged me and she said, Nikki, Lee just popped in with me and he's showing me a huge diamond ring. And I said, that better not fucking be for me. Like, that better not be a diamond ring for me because I ain't getting married. And she was like, maybe you should talk to him. We had a big laugh about it, right? Put it out of my head. A week goes by. I'm helping my neighbor pack, like go through old boxes so we can get rid of stuff so he can pack new boxes because he's getting ready to move. Well, he finds this huge, those huge, it's not cubic zirconia, but it's like gem cut, like it's a fake huge diamond, right? And he hands it to me. He's like, "Oh, Nikki, you can just have this. I don't even know why I have it." And I put out my hand and I'm like, "Ah, ha, ha, isn't that funny looking?" And then I was like, "Ah, that's the diamond ring that Rachel was talking about." So always take good notes in your readings because it may not have happened yet. You know what I mean? And that's a really concrete example of that. Does anybody have questions or more comments like Lynn?
Well, I'll just say one more thing. When
Yeah.
Rachel was reading, she was talking about Kevin's brother. And I'm thinking like I thought, well, he doesn't have a brother. What do you mean? And well, he says he has a brother. And then I realized, of course he has a brother. He has a half brother who he went on a trip with. Of course he has.
There we go. Yeah. And that's a prime example. Like it it's you have to be open to what they're saying, right? Because your logical ego brain is gonna be like, yeah, no, no. It doesn't have to be exact, right? It doesn't have to be exact. Like, and it's how you interpret it. When Rachel messaged me about the ring, our first thought was a logical, rational human thing. Oh God, like Nick is gonna get proposed to, but that wasn't it at all. It was something totally different. So you have to be open to the information that you're being told too. Like if you go into a reading or you're at a group reading and you're not open to the information that comes through, you close the door on your kids. You close the door on your kids because they're not gonna speak to you like I'm speaking to you. It's gonna be a little cryptic, quite honestly. It's gonna be a little cryptic, right? So if you immediately discount it because it doesn't fit right in with what you're thinking it's supposed to mean, you're closing the door on them. You're closing the door on the communication, closing the door on the messages. And a lot of people don't believe in mediumship because of that reason, because they're getting evidential information, but because it's not fitting in what they think it's supposed to mean and allowing spirit to show them what it does mean actually, they walk away thinking that mediumship is a woo-woo bullshit thing. So you have to go in with no expectation. You go in with no expectation. Um, mediumship depends on the energy of the reader and the sitter. So, you know, Kat sitting beside me, she can tell you, Rachel will do it. Like if they're having low vibe days, then like Kat will reschedule her readings because she doesn't have the highest vibration to be able to bring in to be the channel, right? You guys know about vibration, so on the days you're low vibrating, it's like you don't want to deal with even the humans, you know? So a lot of it depends on the energy of the sitter too. That doesn't mean that if you're really down in it, you can't have a medium reading. You can, but you have to still go in with no expectation and be open to what spirit's going to tell you. And I do very, very, very strongly, even with the mediums that we've got coming up, always take notes. Did Marie talk about piggybacking?
Marie Marie did talk about piggybacking, but only after I brought it up, and in the vein that Marie doesn't believe in piggybacking.
She
So that
doesn't.
was,
Okay.
yeah, she doesn't believe in piggybacking. Um, so that was the only, yeah.
Okay. Well, I do believe in piggybacking. I've seen too many group readings. I've worked with too many mediums to not believe in piggybacking. So, it's basically like, if Kyle is talking to Kim through the reading, but there's some things that don't quite fit. It's because another kid baby Leaf stepped in, and maybe Kyle's telling Kim like the leaves on the tree, the da 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 da, the it's on the arm, and Kim's like, "What like none of this fits for me." I can still take that, even though Kyle's not mine. I can still take that because I know enough about mediumship now to know that Leaf's standing right beside Kyle, and he's like, "Hey, like throw this in for my mom." You know what I mean? And sometimes the piggybacking can be very general because it can be a group of them at that point trying to get messages out, get messages out. Okay. I very much do believe in piggybacking. You've seen it too, Kathy. How many of you have been in a reading where
Yeah.
you've had piggybacking happen? Yeah, me too. A lot of times what I see too is that kids whose parents do have their awareness open, like I don't need a medium reading anymore. You know what I mean? Whereas in the first 2 years, I needed medium reading. I don't need them anymore. But so Leaf oftentimes won't, he may piggyback a little bit, or he may step in at the first to, spout off some sarcastic crap, because that's what he generally always does. And then he steps back because he knows that there are other parents there that do need that validation. They do need that evidential stuff, whereas I don't need that anymore because I'm very solid in my truth. You know what I mean? So, yeah. What else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I went to a group reading the other night. There was 10 of us or 9 of us.
Mhm.
And she's read me before. I don't normally go to these types of readings. I have to say I feel like I'm kind of beyond those types of readings.
Right.
They feel like to me they're more for like beginners, I guess.
Okay.
But she said something to me that she said that I'm not sure I'll be able to bring anything different through.
Hmm.
So that kind of like, I'm like, that it didn't sit with me. It
That
like
that doesn't that
like
that
why?
raises a bit of a red flag for me.
Yeah.
Because to me, and this brings up a really good thing, Kim, because like I'm a little bit picky. Like Kathy and I have
Mm-hmm.
used a lot of different mediums within the
Mm-hmm.
community. We've sat with a lot of them. We've built relationships with a lot of them. We've had in-depth conversations that have nothing to do with our kids personally, but just about mediumship. Just like about the I don't want to say trade. That's not the right word, but about the process and all of that. So that does raise a little bit of a red flag for me because she's not the one bringing it through. Like she's just the channel. So it's not
Right.
like she's reaching over for information. She should be connecting with spirit, and he's telling her what to bring through. So that's a
Right.
little that's a little odd. I will tell you, I have seen mediums who um here's the deal with mediumship. Something that I've noticed is that the mediums that I really, really like, that I will use again, and I never get the same information, even from somebody that has read for me 8 million times. Rachel never gives me the same information. Kat never gives me the same information. Marie never gives me the same info. Like I've never had a reading with somebody more than once and they gave me the same information. So it is odd to me. What it what I kind of think about is like there are a lot of mediums that, because there's something called spiritual ego, right? You tame
Mm-hmm.
your ego, and ego's a slippery little leprechaun. And so then it gets into spiritual ego, right? So I won't work with a medium that I know is not doing their work in duality and taming their ego. So for me, what that brings up, Kim, is if she's saying, I don't know if I can bring any other information through, there's a little bit of spiritual ego in there because like you're just the channel. Like you're just relaying information. It's not your information.
Right.
Does that make sense? So, and I don't mean to discount anybody. And
No,
you know, and you have to remember too that mediums can go, you know, if they're in a really good place and they're doing their self work and things are calm, you know, they may be in a space where they can connect really well. But for me, I like a medium who can say to me, I'm not in the space to do it. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to do it. I would rather hear that than have a medium say, I don't know if I can bring something different through because there's no accountability there as the channel. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
yeah, definitely. And I don't tend to see someone that I've already seen.
Mhm,
I don't normally go to somebody twice
mhm.
because I've heard this before.
Really? See,
Yeah. Which
I've
doesn't make sense
never,
to me. And I've never questioned it until the other day. I'm like, wait a minute. That doesn't sound right coming, you know, from someone that is
well, yeah,
channeling. Yeah.
because if you think about it, I mean, you have this whole lifetime. I mean, Lisa's brought up things to me that I didn't even like. I really had to sit and be like, "What is she like?" And like go through my memory files and be like, "I vaguely remember when he was 4 and what he's
Right.
talking about." You know, so there's so much information, like
There
so
is.
much
Yeah.
that you know, and even like leak, it's tricky. Like, you know, when Karina was doing a reading not long ago. I don't even. I think she did it for Healing Warrior parents. Um, you know, when Leaf started coming to her, he kept telling her his name was Bobby because his name is Bobby Lee. And it was a point of contention between him and I because I was like, I'm not fucking calling you Bobby. That is your father's name. Your father and I decided you would be called Lee. Like you go by your middle name. But it was funny because you know, and even since then, if he pops into a group reading with her, he'll come as Bobby, and she doesn't always recognize him at first. You know what I mean? So that just I don't
Mm.
that does not resonate with me, and it. I'm surprised you've heard it twice from two different mediums because I've never ever been told that. Kathy, have you ever been told that?
I'm sorry, my boss is texting me too. Have I been told what?
It's okay if you need it. Do you need to deal with Paula?
No, I'm sorry. I was, have I been told
No,
what?
that Kim's been told by two different mediums that if they read for her again, they didn't know if they could bring any different information through.
No, I have never been told that. And
Hmm.
I have had at least 6 visitation readings with Kat Bailey, and she's brought through
Mhm.
different information every
Okay.
freaking time. She's
Yeah.
never, and she'll say she remembers me, and when Sophie comes in, she'll remember Sophie, but she brings me different stuff every time. I've never had a medium tell me they didn't know if they could bring through anything new. That's so weird. I
And
mean,
that
that's
doesn't
like,
mean,
and
go ahead,
and
Kathy.
my giant red flag with that is
Hmm.
the information they bring through is not fucking static. It's not,
Mhm.
the information
Yes.
changes. It's not like having the same conversation. It ain't
Right.
Groundhog Day. You
Right.
know what I
Right,
mean?
Right.
right. And that doesn't mean, Kim, that they're not good mediums. That is not what
Sure.
that means at all. But it what it would do for me if I was told that by a medium, I would think now is not the time for me to have a reading with her because if she's not
Right.
in a vibrational place to connect where because there's something called psychic energy too, right? Psychic
Hmm.
energy is
Hmm.
different than mediums like than mediumship. So if she's saying she can't bring anything through, then I would be inclined to think, okay, so is she tapping into psychic energy to what she's already
Hmm.
brought through? rather
Mhm.
than actually a tapped in, tuned in connection with my kid. Like that's what I would think. This is why it's good to know about mediumship, you guys. And Kim, you do know about mediumship, I know now. So like you can you understand the difference between the psychic energy versus the mediumship energy
Yep.
versus the past life energy versus the pet energy. You know,
Yeah.
there's so many different areas. So that would be a red flag to me. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't use her later on, but if she told me that again a year later, I would be like, okay, you know. And maybe Kyle's like, I don't want you to have a reading. I mean, they can be picky. Like they
I
can let
know.
you know. So it may have been just a tap on her shoulder, even though she didn't recognize it as that, to relay that to you. So you'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna go with somebody else. You
Mhm.
know what I mean?
Yeah,
So and
definitely.
yeah, that's the flip side of it, you know. People can walk away from a reading and be like, that was terrible, that was terrible. It may be that the medium is a good medium, but your kid was like, no, I don't want to chat with her. You know what I mean?
Well,
So,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I have experienced that with Sophie, where she will come through loud and freaking clear with one media with Kat Bailey, for instance. Sophie loves Kat Bailey, and it's literally almost like having a conversation with Sophie when I do a reading with Kat. There have been other mediums that are very, very good mediums, but Sophie doesn't, for whatever reason, like their energy.
Mhm.
And she'll
Mhm.
come through, but she won't come through with as much personality, so to speak. Or
mhm.
she'll just come through with just the kind of the basic, yeah, mom, I love you. And not to take anything away from Marie whatsoever, because I love Marie Hess.
Yeah, I
Um,
do too.
but a lot of, and I'm sure y'all noticed yesterday, a lot of her readings, she just reverted to that, what I kind of think of as almost a cliche response from a medium. Oh, I'm feeling a lot of gratitude about that, and they love you a lot, and you were such a good mom. I don't know. When I have a really good reading, Sophie says shit way beyond you were a good
Yeah,
mom, because
yeah,
we're past
Yeah,
that in our
yep,
relationship now.
right.
absolutely. And I feel that for myself too, because I don't usually, I did this reading the other night with just, friends from work, and they were all new with this, and, whatever. I don't mess around with, hometown mediums, so to speak. I invest now. I want to get down to business. I don't want to hear about the
There,
passing.
right. And that's the point. So it may not be a vibrational match. Like Marie came
Mm-hmm.
into group, she knows you're all bereaved parents. She doesn't know, she has no idea that that a lot of you have worked with Kathy and I. She doesn't know where you're at in your journey.
Yeah.
So a lot of the platitudes that they give, and I believe that those they are sincere from spirit, but
Yeah.
some of us are like, and I'm like Kathy, I'm like, leave, I don't, I love that you love me, kid, but like, I'm like you. If you got something to say, it better be good, because like I'm taking an hour of my time down here on the earth plane to do this with
Mm-hmm.
you, bro. You know, of course we have a very realistic, like there's no more, oh, you're dead and I'm not, oh, I'm hearing from my son anymore. I was at first, but now it's like, what you got to say? Get it said. I got
Yeah.
dishes to do. You know what I mean? So, and it may be Kim, that it's just it for me, it became, I liked to explore mediums, and I liked to explore ones that weren't big name mediums. You guys do not have to pay $300 to $800 for an hour or a half hour to get a good name reading. Okay. Now I've sat with Farrah Gibson, and she does a damn good job, but I've also sat with a slew of others that have no following whatsoever, that I have been extremely impressed with their evidential mediumship. So don't buy into the societal thing in the bereaved community that you have to pay more to get a good reading, because you don't. You don't. I've had amazing free readings before. You know, the group readings that you guys pop into online. And I know, Kim, you said you feel like that's for beginners, but I'm going to tell you something. Be careful, because that's a little bit of spiritual ego, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're nudged to pop in and you don't usually pop in, guess who tapped you on the shoulder to get your ass in there,
Mm-hmm. Got it.
right?
Mhm.
So it's about being open to being led and going with no expectation and also having no judgment on it. Now, I don't pop in on group readings a lot. I think I've popped in on one of Rachel's in the last 3 years, and Leaf did come through and he's talking about like poop and bathroom humor in this public group reading with like 60 people. I'm like, really? You wanted me to pop on so you could like be ornery in front of all these people, you know? Um, but I knew that like, even though, and I don't enjoy popping on to like public group readings like that anymore. It was a great tool for me as a beginner, especially when I was learning about mediumship and I didn't quite trust if I wanted to spend money on that or not.
Mm-hmm.
But I know now that if he nudges me and the timing lines up and I end up in one, then I'm like, okay, what you got to say, boy? Like, you better pop. I'm not gonna be the 12th person, so you better get it out because mama got stuff to do. You know? So I think that he nudged you to get in there. And maybe it may not even be so you get a message. It may be so you understand more about different mediums and about the energy and the vibration and where you're at in healing versus where other people are at in healing.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of insight to be gained when you're sitting in a reading with a lot of newly bereaved parents who are really desperate to hear. That's a good gauge of measured progress for you to see that, wow, like that's not where I'm at anymore.
Yeah.
And you may not have had the awareness of that profoundly until you sat in the vibration of that again. You know what I mean? Yeah, good stuff. Remember, everything's always orchestrated in divine time.
Mm-hmm.
So like, even if you're like, like with this move, I'm like, really? We're moving? I'm literally in the middle of my busiest time of year with work. I spent all summer. Y'all are not having fun. I'm doing nothing. I'm just sitting here like crickets. And then December comes and I'm like, falls to the wall. And I'm like, we're going to do a major move now, Leaf. Are you kidding me? Okay, let's do it. You know? So remember, even though it may not fit into our timeline, I mean, that's the epitome of child loss, isn't it? Didn't quite fit in our timeline, not what we expected. You have to be open to being divinely led, being divinely guided, having things orchestrated, and releasing control enough to walk into those, right? But what happens, Kim? The old ego gets in the way, doesn't it? Gets in the way, and you're like, that is for beginners. I shouldn't even go to that, but you ended up there anyway because there was a reason that you were supposed to be there. So
Yeah.
that's what like trust in the divine guidance looks like. You know what I mean? That's what it looks like. And it's so freeing too, because like you really have less decisions you have to make when you get into like literally a spirit led life,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And you can't stay in it all the time because ego is resistant to things. But if you can learn to surrender very quickly and get back into the divine guidance, then it really does free up a lot of like, I'm just like, make the decision, Leaf, show me where to go. Come on, team, tell him, he'll tell me, let's do it. I don't want to make the decision. So yeah, it was a great question though, Kim. And it's an interesting one.
Mm.
That's interesting to me. And you're going to find mediums that you'll resonate with more than other mediums. Doesn't mean that other mediums are bad mediums. You just may find ones that resonate more. For me personally, I am more inclined, and it's a personal thing again. I am more inclined because I do believe light workers need to be giving back and paying forward. And you guys know me well enough. Like I give a lot back and I pay a lot forward. So I like to find mediums that are willing to do that too. Like one of the reasons I love Marie is because she still gives, if you haven't had a reading with her, she'll give you a free reading. I love Kat because Kat, when Kat gets settled again, and starts her new beginning, she'll be back in the group running sign of the week and doing that stuff. Karina is she gives back. She has reached out and said, hey, I want to do a group reading. I'm being pulled to do a group reading for healing warrior parents. So for me, it's a lot about integrity. with the medium, and do I see them giving back to their community? Because I believe, and I'm not saying that any of us should work free, because in the 3D realm, we have bills to pay, you know what I mean? But I do believe there is more of a vibrational match for me if I see them giving back to the community as well, you know? So
Well,
that's
and
a good, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm sorry. That's one other thing that I tend to disagree with Marie on. When she said last night that if there's not a connection, it's always the medium's fault. And I disagree with that, because sometimes your kid just don't want to connect with whoever wants to connect with them. You know, it's an exchange of energy. It's not like she can just go by and tap your kid on the head and suck out whatever she wants. It has to be an exchange. And if your child in spirit does not want to exchange energy with a specific person, they're not going to. And I've
Or if
experienced.
they don't want to exchange it at all, maybe they just
Right.
don't want it. Like when Kathy and when we go into these group readings, that's why yesterday I was like, Lee pops in, let me know. But I knew he wouldn't, because, and it's not that he doesn't like Marie's energy. He just is like, man, you know, I got better things to do with my time. So that's a good point, Kathy.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
No, you cannot. Of course you can.
Well, I
Yes.
just wanted to say that I'm really enjoying all of this. I'm just really so involved with my illness, my pain, but at least I feel like my spirit needs and my sometimes grieving are all being watched over and taken care of by this group. It's just that the pain, and now I've been authorized to go back to work, but I can't walk, and just, more and more stresses. So
Yeah.
I have enjoyed everything. I am getting a lot out of it. But one
Good.
question I do have is, what other kind of readings can mediums do? Like, can they call on your spirit guides, or what? I've seen other things that they were doing.
So it's going to depend on the medium. Um, some mediums do just work evidential mediumship where they're connecting with deceased loved ones. There are mediums that do that, as well as you can do spiritual guidance readings. So they're connecting with your team, right? So you can get those. My goodness, there are literally readings I saw the other day, which I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. Medium that was doing readings specific to career paths, which I was like, that's a really cool one, and they're tapping into like soul contract stuff, right? You can also do, there are also areas that are light workers, and they're not specifically mediums, but they're energy workers, like past life regression, Akashic
Some
records.
mediums channel, like Esther Hicks.
Right. Some
She
mediums
channels
channel.
Abraham. I've
Yep.
worked with a medium here in the Cincinnati area that channels Saint Germain, and she's
Mhm.
written like 3 channeled books and that's who she connects with. The psychic festival that I went to a couple weeks ago, there was a medium there who channels Jesus Christ
Mhm.
and offers readings where Christ will speak to you through her.
Mhm. And I know a gal that she doesn't channel, but she gets divine downloads from Mother Mary. So when I'm really like, when I'm in my regular vibration and I'm not like all over the damn map like I have been this week, but it was pointed out to me actually that a lot of times when I'm coaching in group, and those of you that have been in group a lot, I end up channeling. And I was like, what are you talking about? And one of my clients was like, Nikki, you speak completely different when you're channeling. And I laughed. I said, what do you mean I don't cuss? She's like, well, that's one of them. But she said, you flow and you articulate and your cadence in your voice changes. And I was like, huh. So I reached out to Rachel, and I was like, it was pointed out to me that I may be channeling when I'm coaching in groups. And she said, well, yeah, Nikki, you are. And I said, well, who the hell am I channeling? And she tapped in. She said, you're channeling there. Because when I get into that flow, like I can go right to wherever you're at within your journey, and I can tell you exactly what tool that's coming from somewhere that you're supposed to be using at that point. So she said, you're channeling their guide. That's because I said, I don't understand how I know like exactly where that person's at, even though I haven't walked that person's experience, right? She said, because you're channeling their guide and their guides know their experience. I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I was like, okay, awesome. And then I went on my merry way. So, like Kathy said, they're channelers. They're because we're all spirit, right? So, I mean, how many of you here have gotten downloads, like divine downloads, and you're like, where the hell did that way profound in-depth information come from? I can remember when it started happening with me in year one when I was really working on opening my awareness. I was like, what just happened? Like, where did that information come from? That's crazy. And it wasn't even spoken the way that I would say it, but I heard it that way and I would write it down. So they're pet mediums, Kim. I mean, because pets have spirit, so they're pet mediums. Just all kinds. But you can absolutely. I think Rachel Pearson does. What she do? Divine guidance, is that what it's called, Kathy?
Yep. Yeah.
Div- Divine guidance reading, where it's information from like your team, like your guides. So lots of different ones. It's not just, which I found really cool, because when I first started dabbling, right, after Leaf left Body, I was really only looking for evidential mediums to bring him through. I had no idea at that point that I could get, you know, I knew about past life regression, but I didn't know about divine guidance readings. I didn't know about Akashic record reading. I didn't know about like soul contract readings, um, things like that. I knew about psychic readings, because I have a very distant cousin that does psychic stuff, and she does evidential mediumship stuff too, which I never even, of course, I didn't even think about it before Lee popped. I was just like, okay, that's our crazy third cousin. So they're all different kinds of mediums, and if you're feeling pulled, like to know, and they're not gonna say now, Kimberly Woodruff, you are to, quit your job. Well, they're on Kathy to move, but they're not gonna say point blank these are your steps, this. It's going to be pretty general, but it's going to give you an idea of which direction to go. You know what I mean? So I wanted to say to you too, with your pain and everything, and I know it's really, really hard, but remember, the more you vocalize that is where your intentional focus is right now, the more that's going to come, right? So like, I'm going to give you an example of this. Right now I have a cerebral spinal fluid leak. And so the pressure on my optic nerves, I'm actually losing vision intermittently in my right eye. That's why I'm not supposed to be lifting stuff, but I'm moving. And so I don't have another neurology appointment till January. So I had a choice with this move. Like, it was like, okay, I can focus that I really feel like shit a lot of the time, or I can surrender to the fact that this is what has happened to me right now. And we all just established the fact that Nikki is not growing old gracefully. So I'm kind of pissed about my body breaking down anyway. But I can sit in that all the time, or I can make that an afterthought, still care for myself, mind you, right? Make it an afterthought and then focus my energy on the move and the growth. And I also am a firm believer of what is this trying to teach me, right? So anytime something that is contrast, like pain or anything that is perceived as struggle, I've trained myself now to move my ego aside and say, what am I supposed to learn from this, right? What am I supposed to learn from this? So I have struggled with this, like, because I thought I had MS. We haven't known what's going on with my health for about a year now. I've had some mild seizure activity, and we still don't know. And so I've had to say, you know, and I obsessed about it for a little bit, didn't I, Kathy? Like I was on the internet, like, oh my God, I might have Lou Gehrig's disease, like, you know, and I'm like, what supplements do I need to be taking? This, that, and the other. And it terrified me. Like I was asking, I asked Kat, I asked Rachel, I asked another medium, like, is anybody telling you anything that's going on with me medically? You know what I mean? Like anybody saying anything about this? And I was misinterpreting things that I was seeing as like like I pulled out of the driveway one day, me and Tom, and a huge like tractor trailer thing in front of us that had something about ALS on the back, and I was like, oh my God, that spirit telling me I have ALS. You know, I was freaked out because that's where my attention was going at that time. I've since learned to like, you know what? You're not getting answers right now, Nikki. So let it go. Let it go and let it flow and focus where I can. It's really hard to do, Kim, when you're in physical pain. Very, very difficult to do when you're in physical pain. But you have to remember that even that physical pain is there to teach you something. So for you, maybe it was to teach you, hey, Kimberly, slow your ass down. Because I've seen you, girl. I've been at work. She's just all over. She is all busy all the time unless she's laying on the beach. Other than that, she is off doing the shopping and doing all. So maybe it was like spirit was like, you got to slow it down. You got to slow it down so you have time to care for your body, care for your spirit, you know? So, and the good news about it, Kim, is that the more you tend to your spirit, you're raising your vibration there, which helps your physical vibration, which helps healing in your body. So, um, you know, it's all connected. And I'm glad that, you know, I think that this was divine timing too for you to be able to be here with us as well. So, yeah, good questions. Anybody else? All right, so we're done. Just kidding. Questions, comments?
Nick.
Yeah.
I'm learning about channeling. I got this book.
That's awesome. Everybody can do it. I mean, we're not all going to be channeling Jesus Christ or, you know, Mother Mary or Basher or Abe Hicks energies, but even when you guys get a message from your kid, like when you get a divine download from your child, that's a little bit of a form of channeling. You know, channeling is basically just being in the flow of the information. You know, that's what mediums are doing. They're channeling information. So opening up your awareness, and that's the good thing about it is like the kids, they're putting you through the boot camp, right? They're giving you the basics, they're giving you the foundation. So, you know, your intuition is a form of that, using your intuition, you know. Yesterday, and divine intervention comes into that. Yesterday, Kat and I had to run to the store real quick, and the store that we went to didn't have what we needed, so we had to go to a different store. We had not planned on that. It put another 10 minutes onto our trip back to the house. So when we come back to the house, we happen upon an extremely bad car accident. And Kat said, that's why we were sent to the other place, Nikki. And I was like, that's right. So, like, when you tap into intuition as well, that is a form of connected awareness as well. And it's a really hard one to discern, though, that gut feeling, you know, because your ego gets in the way. Ego's a bitch, guys. But it can be tamed. But then you get that part tamed and it pops in somewhere else, and then you have to tame it there. It speaks many, many languages.
Keeps you hopping.
It does. It does.
Way more than
And-
you want to hop on most days.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, ego's not a bad thing, you guys. Like, it truly drives the human race, right? When it's in balance, it leads to success. It's what it's what motivates, you know, you to be able to pay your bills. It's what motivates some people to take care of their bodies. I'm still struggling with that part. But you know, so it's not a bad thing. It's just in order to connect and be in your awareness and be into flow and lead a spirit-led life, you have to put it aside in the passenger seat so your spirit can step in the driver's seat. That is also what you have to do when you go into a medium reading. Because if you go into a medium reading with expectations and your ego in the driver's seat, nothing they say to you is going to be enough for you to believe. Nothing. Nothing will. And nothing ever will. Because you're not aware of your ego. You can't discern it from your spirit. And so you're out of vibrational alignment. You cannot receive the messages. You know what I mean? So, yeah. What else?
Well, maybe I'm going to mention something. It has nothing to really do with the mediumship yesterday.
That's
But
okay.
I was at a friend's house last week and she lost her dad 6 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
She has lived with him like all her life.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting in the kitchen and something kept coming through to me, corner my chair. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And we're having a conversation. And finally I said to Sue, I said, Sue, what is going on with Pop's chair? She goes, what are you talking about? I said, it's him. He's telling me to corner his chair. And she's like, oh my God. She got him a new chair for his room and she had it
Mm-hmm.
flat against the wall and the ottoman was in the corner. I looked at it. I said, why would you do that? He's like, are you kidding me? And he literally told me to tell her to corner his chair and put the ottoman on the other side. And then, of course, she loved it. But I've never had that happen before. I was very close to Pop. I've known him for 30 years. But he came, he was so clear to me.
Yeah. And
Just
that's the
move my
difference. So,
chair.
Kathy, right there, that's what I was talking about with objectivity, right? You loved him, you knew him, but you did not live with him. So he
No.
was so blatantly clear to you. Whereas sometimes Jules is not blatantly clear. It's, you have to, you know,
She's fresh.
yeah, but you have to wade through the subtleties because you know her. But it doesn't surprise me that he was able to tap in with you because you do have an open awareness. And here's the thing too, guys, like you can control that, right? So um a medium that I mentored under had told me once that it's like a lighthouse. When your awareness is open, you're emitting like a lighthouse signal. So that's why mediums will set boundaries within their reading. You know, they let spirit know when they're open, they let spirit know when they're closed. I get leery, and that doesn't mean that if the message really needs to get through, like if they're in the store and they're like, oh, that person's like person is right here saying go up to that person, like that's okay. But um, you know, I get leery of any medium who's open all the time, like all the time, you know what I mean? But for those of you opening awareness, it people they are gonna come to you. They are, you know. I've gotten more dream visits from Kat's son Ben than I have from Leaf, you know, and they're very crystal clear. Whereas when Leaf dream visits me, they're very obscure and I have to pull out meaning of what he was trying to tell me. If he was trying to tell me something at all, sometimes he'd just popping in to say, hey, you know, that's another thing to remember. Every time your child comes through doesn't mean they have some huge message for you. It may just be like, hey, Ma, I'm right here. Now, other times they may have a very distinct, profound message for you, right? But so it's not going to be every single time because you're developing a daily relationship with them. You have to remember to link it to the physical too. When they are physical, sometimes they're just saying, hey, Ma, you know, I'm here, grabbing lunch, leaving. Sometimes they said, hey, we need to sit down and have a conversation. Same thing in spirit. So I think that's awesome, Kathy. That's
Yeah, it was
totally
kind of
awesome.
neat.
And it cracks me up that he did not like his chair not to be catty cornered. He wanted his chair catty cornered, man.
I think
I
he
get
didn't
it.
want his ottoman hidden. You couldn't even see his little ottoman in the corner. I was like, why is that in the corner? It was
Well,
cute.
and he probably likes the he probably his spirit probably sits there a lot, and he's like, can't even put my damn
Mhm.
feet up because damn Oddman's in the corner.
It's true. And she was
And how
struggling
great
with
for
it.
her. Yeah. And how great for her, because she's not in a place to open up her awareness yet. She's gonna have a lot of healing to do, but you are. So you went and you got to sit as the messenger.
Right.
That's an
nice.
honor.
That felt
Yeah,
nice, yeah. And then
I
I was
love
like,
it.
hey, Pops.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, and not only
Yeah.
is it an honor, but it's also Spirit's way of expanding our reach. They
Mhm.
use those of us who are aware to expand our reach to other people, to introduce the possibility or to confirm and validate for other people, just like we had mediums confirm and validate for us. So, in that
Mhm.
respect, we're all mediums and we're giving other people that validation as well.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Christine gets a lot from Leaf. Leaf will be very verbose with Christine. I mean, he can just ramble on for hours with her when I get, hey, Ma, I'm here. Now I'm leaving. Bye. I don't get a lot of really profound messages from Leaf like I did year 1 and 2. Christine gets great ones from him, though.
And he even visits my daughter-in-law in
Yeah.
in dreams. So yeah.
Yeah.
I do have to say the last one, Nikki, was like just yesterday, and it was a sloth on a toilet reading a newspaper. So,
He loves this kid in the freaking bathroom. I'm like, you are 24 years old now. Must we with the bathroom humor still? Because the reason he does that is because early on, when we were living, they had moved us back to Missouri. My parents had, and we were staying temporarily in their basement. And I would have to get up in the middle of the night and walk through like an unfinished part of it. And it kind of creeped me out. And I could sense him in like the shadows. And I told him, I'm like, you're creeping me out. That I don't like that when I get up at the middle of the night in the dark. Like that freaks me out, right? And I would go to the bathroom. And then I started hearing, like, when I was in the bathroom, I started hearing, like, laugh at me and say, ha ha ha, I don't have to do all that anymore. And I'm like, can I have a little bit of privacy here? So the kid, he does not stop with the bathroom humor. Like, he still thinks it's so freaking hilarious. And I'm like, dude, apparently you're not ever going to outgrow that.
well,
So,
Alex liked the bathroom humor too, so it makes sense.
yeah, I mean, it's just boys. It's just boys, you know. So that cracks me up. So funny. It's better. He tells Kathy and I that we're lazy. So it could be worse than bathroom humor.
Well, that's when I first started seeing the sloths. Was
When he
that
was telling you
I
were
was
lazy.
being yeah, and Alex actually then popped in at one point and said, you weren't listening to me, Mom, so I asked Leaf for help.
Brought in some reinforcements.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Leaf's a little bit blatant like his mother, so we don't beat around the bush very well.
Yeah,
And when we try,
he even told me to step it up one day with the moving my body. This was like sloths after being at the gym, like on
yeah,
the elliptical for an hour. And I was like, kid, I was just at the gym. I was on the
yeah,
elliptical for an hour. And it was like this quick fleeting step it up. Step it up. And I understood what he was saying because like I had been in this period of like not running. And before,
right.
before Alex, like I was going out and running 20 miles for the fun of it. I was doing like marathons and
Okay.
ultras and all
That's
that.
insane to me. That's insane to me anyway. Like I will forever not understand the runner. I'm
Yeah.
like, who the fuck wants to run for fun? I don't get it. I've ran a little bit and I don't ever hit that endorphin flow. So,
Yeah.
no.
It's just so, but I understood when I heard that quick fleeting, like step it up, like, I'm like, I know what you mean. Like,
Yeah. I'm glad he's giving it to you. He's totally given up on Kathy and I on that because I'm like, kid, like whatever. You're in weightless form. Get back in a dense body and then we'll talk about it. Too funny. What else, guys? Do all of you here believe in mediumship, or are there some of you that still struggle with it? And it's okay if you do. It's okay to have healthy skepticism.
Oh, I totally believe in it now.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean,
Well,
I never, I totally, absolutely, I believe in it.
There comes a point where literally you start saying to yourself, like, you just can't make this shit up,
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
Like, you
Yeah.
just can't make this shit up.
Yeah.
And that happens with communication too, right? Like with
Mhm.
your awareness of your child with communication and the not coincidental, seemingly coincidental things that happen. And you're like, you just can't make it up.
Mhm. That's right.
Well, I've been a skeptic, but I do believe in it, but I'm having a real battle with my ego.
Well,
Ego has
you're
been
right.
beating
You're
me.
right on track then, Patty.
It's
What is
been
it telling
beating me. My ego is saying you're making it up. You know that you get a reading. No, they could say that they could say that about anybody. And I
Let me
don't
ask
know
you
if I'm
this.
aware or not. I'm
Okay.
doubting everything.
Well, and here's the thing, Patty. Don't be upset because you're doubting everything, because what's happening is you have to doubt things for you to explore things. You know what I mean? So it's a good tool. You can use your ego in that way. Um, Doubting is different than discounting. Okay. Doubting means you're leaving the door a little bit open for the possibility. Discounting it altogether means you're not even open to the possibility. So don't get way down on yourself, because we all start with doubt. Ego is very, very strong, and it takes a lot of in-depth. I mean, these women that have, you could ask Kim. Kim and I have done a lot of ego work together, right, Kim Robinson? And so there are layers and levels to the ego work that we don't think about until you really dive into it. So you can't beat yourself up because you don't have the awareness, because you don't understand what the ego part of you is yet. And that's okay. That's part of the learning. Part of it for you, Patty, is going to be like, I know that you know a lot of spiritual information, right? You know a lot of spiritual information, but knowing it and then integrating it into your life and living it are two separate things. Those are two separate steps. So you've gathered the information. Now we have to figure out for you how to put it into your life to integrate it and live within it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's part of the journey. So I think it's healthy for you to be doubting right now. Have you ever had an evidential reading where things came through that you were like, before your ego kicked in, you were like, yeah, that's it. That makes perfect sense.
Not too much. I'm looking for something evidence that's going to blow me away. That's going to
You're
say,
looking for
okay.
that sign of your sign, Patty.
That's what
The
you're
sign
doing.
of
You're
your
looking for the
sign.
sign of
Everybody
your
wants
sign.
yeah,
one.
that nobody knows, kind of
Well,
thing.
most things somebody's going to know about, right? Somebody's going to know about. But again, these are strangers to you. They can't find details that they're going to tell you. I'm going to give you an example. So in year one for me, I had a childhood friend, and her daughter left body 20 years ago when she was 2. And she had red hair when she left. And so we kept, as an inside joke, Misty and I kept telling Leaf, hey Leaf, look for the girl with the fiery red hair. Look for the girl with the fiery red hair. That's Tristan. Look for her. Okay. So and so in year one, every medium reading I had, and I had a lot, I kept saying, Leaf, just tell the medium, that you found the girl with the red hair, and I won't have to doubt anymore. I will know. I will live in my knowing. And I'll tell you what, I did a ton of ego work, Patty. He never told him. Now I was getting all kinds of really good evidential. I was learning to connect with him. I was opening my awareness. I was doing my body work. I was doing my vibrational work. Like, I wasn't just learning to connect with him. I was doing mind, body, spirit stuff. So I got to a really good place. I got into my knowing. I still had grief waves at that point in year 2. It was like, it's probably like it was right before year 2. Now you have to remember, I did obsessive work. So don't be like, well, Nikki, I'm this far out, because we all have our own timeline of our journey, right? I was pushed into the deep end to do a lot of work really quickly. That way I could be in this position leading you guys, right? So I know that now. But so he never said that until one day I scheduled a reading with Rachel for Omri, because Omri had a friend who left body. I think we were a little over, we were at almost 2 years, or maybe a year and a half. So Rachel's sitting on the laptop with Omri, and I'm just sitting there beside her. And I had already told Leaf, like, this is Omri's reading, so don't talk to me. Like, you need to talk to Omri and bring Cassidy through if she doesn't know how to get through and all the things. And Rachel's reading for Omri, and then Rachel stops and looks at me and she says, Mom, and I said, yeah. And she said, Leaf wants me to tell you, I found the girl with the fiery red hair. And I said, holy shit. And at that point, I already had so much validation that it wasn't like I didn't have tears. And I was like, because I was already in my knowing at that point. But I left Omri at the computer. I went outside, sat down, and I smoked a cigarette. And I'm talking to Leaf, and I said, why the fuck did you wait a year? Like, do you know how much work I've had to do on my ego? I was like chewing him out. I'm like, I have had to do so much work on my ego detainment. And you could have just said that a year and a half ago, and I would have been in my knowing. I heard him very distinctly say to me, that was the work you had to do. I was not going to say that to you because that was the work you had to do. So your ego taming work is part of what gets you from belief into knowing. Okay. And Patty, they're not going to come to you and say it's not their job to convince you, because their job is to be there and give you the messages. Your job, because you're still in physical, is to tame the ego side of you so that you can keep the door open to them. They can't they cannot force you to keep the door open, right? They're not going to haunt you. Thank God for that. But so they're showing you that this is the next phase of your journey, is the ego work. And everybody here, Angie Hop, I know Angie, like, she did a ton of it. Like, everybody here, how many of you were in the same spot as Patty and you were like, I just can't shake the doubt. My ego keeps telling me my kid is dead. I'm making this up. It's a coping mechanism. Like, that was a good 4 years of my journey to some degree. Now it got easier and easier because belief to knowing can be a long time. But I mean, I have heard Kim Robinson say, this fucking ego, Nikki, I'm so sick of it. I've heard Angie say, this ego, Nikki, I'm so sick of it. I've heard Kathy say it. I've heard Lynn say it. I've heard Rebecca say it. Like, it is a very natural part of this journey where you're at. Okay. So it's an exhausting part.
It's relentless.
It is relentless.
Do you ask your daughter
relentless.
for the sign of your sign? Before you have a reading, Patty, do you ask your daughter for the sign of your sign? Do you ask her on the regular? Send me this. Send me that. I asked Sophie, one of my most profound signs after I really, really was solid in my knowing. I'm driving home from work one night. It's still before the time changed. It's like 5:30. It's freaking dark outside. And I'm crying because I cried all the way to work. I cried all the way home every day, and I'm crying and I'm talking to Sophie. And I say to her, I'm like 3 miles from my house. And I say to her, Sophie, if you're really with me, show me a car with one headlight before I get home. Less than a half a mile later, I see a car with one headlight. Okay, I live in Ohio, not that crazy that it's out of the realm, right? So, and of course, being who I am and being where I was in the journey, one wasn't enough. And I'm like, oh, thank you, honey. But if you're really with me, show me another car with one headlight. Mile later, I turn on the next road, car with one headlight. I thank her, but am I satisfied? Oh, hell no. I get to I'm stopping to turn into my neighborhood, right? And I say, "Oh, Sophie, thank you, thank you, thank you, baby. Please show me one more car with only one headlight." And as I'm stopped to turn into my neighborhood, this car is coming toward me. It's got two headlights, but one of them is really, really dim, right? It wasn't all the way out, it was just dim. And I said, "Oh, okay, it's not just one headlight, but I'll take it. Thank you, baby." And as I turn into my neighborhood, the first freaking car I pass only has one headlight. And it was like, "Are you fucking satisfied now, mom? Okay. That's 4 cars with one headlight in 3 miles. Are you satisfied?" And I had to say, "Yes, I'm satisfied." There
And
comes a point where you have to be satisfied with the sign and say, "It's real. This shit is real."
because
Well, you know,
she's not gonna, they're not gonna materialize in front of you, Patricia, and say, "We're right here, we're not dead, mom." They're not gonna do that, because the point of them being in spirit is to awaken the spirit within you. Write that down. The point of your kids being in spirit is to awaken the spirit within you. So no, if it was easy as we're going to materialize I mean, Kathy's extremely lucky. I mean, Sophie was on it, like, but not everybody's going to get that, because, and Kathy had already been working ego work, working ego work, working ego work, working ego work. So if you're not doing the ego work, and Patricia, it is exhausting and it is relentless. But one of the things that I teach in the ego taming class and that I've taught private clients is to name your ego, because it's like you have 2 separate entities living within you. So you know those cartoons with the little devil on the shoulder, little angel on the shoulder?
Yeah.
That is ego and that is spirit. So literally, when my ego would say, "Oh, Nikki, Letha's dead, Letha's dead," I would look to my left shoulder. I would literally cuss out the air looking at my left shoulder. I had to look like a complete and total crazy person. But I was like, "Ego, you shut the fuck up. You don't know what you're talking about, blah, 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 blah." And you have to tame it, because here's the thing, Patty. Ego is of the physical realm. Ego only knows about the things you can touch, taste, see, hear, and feel physically. It operates off the 5 senses. The reason it tells you that you're making it up, the reason that it tells you to doubt, is because it doesn't know about spirit, because spirit is 6th sense stuff. So it's telling you, "Hey, Patty, you're in the physical world. This is the reality. Like, there's nothing beyond this reality." It's telling you that. So part of the work that you have to do is get into the layers of your truth. It's one thing to say, "Yeah, I believe that dead isn't dead." What does that mean? I can sit here for 2 hours and tell you the in-depth truth that I have. Okay? I do not believe in death. I think that our kids are more alive than we are. I think that they are multidimensional beings, so they can split energy and be in several places at once. Okay, Lynn, we love you. I believe that Leaf leaving body was exactly what he and Omri and everybody that's involved with it signed up for, that because there's purpose and learning in it. I believe that we come to Earth to learn and grow through contrast. I believe that we come to Earth to discover our remembering of what we've learned in past life. I can give you hours upon hours upon hours of things that is within my truth now that I have discovered on my journey. So if you don't have a super in-depth truth, your ego is always going to act up more, because its truth is that this right here is the end all be all. But then you can even trick it logically, because, there are tones that the human ear doesn't hear, right? But we know they exist. People believe in love. It's not a palpable, it's not a physical thing, yet we believe in it. We know it exists, right? So I would advise you to dig really deep into your truth. Really get into the nitty gritty of it. Like, what do you believe? I believe in reincarnation. I believe in, I don't believe in hell. I think hell is a bullshit ego man-made thing. I believe parts of the Bible that I can read the Bible now and I know what was spiritually intended, and I can pick out the parts that man added in just because of the ego in it. You know what I mean? I believe that there is deep spiritual truth in every religious teaching that there is, but man got a hold of it, ego got a hold of it, and started skewing it. Like, really get into what is your belief, because just believing that death may not be dead, that's not going to be enough to tame your ego. Your ego, what is going to it's like teaching a toddler, right? So the other part of that, its ego is the emotional guidance system here on the earth plane, right? It's like what causes you pain is showing you when you're not in alignment with truth. Okay, so it's kind of like touching the hot stove. Okay, so think of it that way. You touch the hot stove, ow, that hurts. You touch the hot stove, ow, that hurts, it's painful. You touch the hot stove, ow, that hurts, it's painful. The pain is trying to tell you that you're thinking or behaving in a way that is not conducive to not hurting. Not hurting equals peace. Not hurting equals truth. Does that make sense? So an example is when you say, oh my God, both my kids are dead and gone. It's freaking painful, right? The pain is there to let you know it's not true. When you say, my kids are not dead, my kids are available to me, I can keep doing the work and I can learn to connect with them. Does that feel peaceful to you? Feels way less painful. So it's your emotional guidance system. So ego's not a bad thing. We just have to learn to utilize it in the way that it serves us. That's the key, guys. You want your ego to serve you, not for you to serve your ego. So, Patty, it's about really being I know the ego is relentless, but it's about literally learning to recognize it as a separate voice within you, and you literally talking to that separate voice. When that voice says to you, whatever that medium just said, she didn't get that all the way right, so she must be full of shit. You say, you know what, ego? Shut up. Like, you don't even know anything about what I'm doing right now with this medium because you don't understand it. So I need you just to pipe down, and that's nice compared to what I used to tell mine. Pipe down. You don't know you literally have to talk to it like it's a little kid. And I would advise that you start doing that. So when you're driving and you're crying and you're thinking about the kids that they're dead, you have to have the awareness to say, oh shit, my ego is in the driver's seat literally right now. And you have to start speaking to it and say, you know what, ego? My kids aren't dead. I wish you would stop fucking telling me that because it's so painful. And you don't need, talk to it like it is a completely separate person, truly. In other classes, I've said, thank God that Omri and Tom were out of the house most days when I was in my deep healing, because I was walking around my house screaming over my left shoulder at my ego, and they probably would have committed me. You know what I mean? So it is relentless and it is exhausting. But one of the things that I do too, when I cut cords, and I don't have an ego in the context of Leaf being dead anymore because he's not dead. It doesn't even occur to me that the world thinks that he's dead. But the ego always acts up in other ways. So if my ego's prickly about some other earth bullshit that's going on, when I cut cords, I now cut cords with my own ego. So I'll do that.
It's a good
I
idea.
cut the cord. Yeah. I write burn letters to my own ego. I have frozen my own ego in the freezing intention. It is a lot to work with, but here's the thing, Patty, is that once you get your ego tamed in this context, it's going to come up in a different way. Ego is always with us, you guys. It is part of it's part of us, just like our spirit is part of us. So, you get that tamed, then you get in the car and somebody cuts you off. Guess who has the road rage? It's not your fucking spirit, because spirit is maybe they cut you off because they're the one going to get a flat tire running over the nail that's right in front of you. The ego is going to be the one saying, you son of a bitch, you just cut me off. Oh, you know what I mean?
Well, and the taming also, Patty, you don't necessarily, just like connecting with your children starts with awareness, ego taming starts with awareness. You have to become mindful and you have to become aware of when your ego is kicking in, when your ego is starting to act up, and you have to start with the awareness of A, what your ego is, and B, when it's acting up. And then you have to become mindful and start saying to yourself, okay, I'm having an ego moment. Okay, this is an ego vent, blah, 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 and get it all out, and then go back to your spirit side. It's very, it was way more difficult for me to become aware of my ego than it was to become aware of my child in spirit.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it
It's
seems to
constant
be
work.
targeting the, I think I have telepathic conversations, and
You
it
do.
seems to be targeting that. So
It
now
will.
I'm, you know,
So you just,
I'm making it
just-
all up. They sound like me. They say
Yeah.
what I say. How could it be them?
because it is them. Because when you have telepathic conversation, it doesn't sound like their voice. It sounds like your voice. Sometimes for me, it sounds like Omri's voice and not Leaf's voice. Like,
And I always have to
that's
start it.
that's okay. You know what? You may not be starting it. They may be whispering and then you think you're starting it. Don't overthink your telepathic link. It doesn't matter who the fuck starts it as long as you're doing it. When your ego starts telling you, oh, you're just talking to yourself, it is going to be your job to say, you know what? Would you butt the hell out? Like, I'm talking to my kids here and you're not biting. And then you keep having it. You are having it. But until you tame that ego, you're going to think you're crazy. You're in the crazy making part of it, Patty. You know, how many of y'all, when you started connecting with your kids and believing you were connecting with your kids, thought, I am losing my fucking mind? I did. I thought I'd lost my whole damn mind and I needed to be put in the crazy house.
I
know?
grew up with all of this. I was
Mhm.
raised with all of these beliefs, and I still think I'm crazy. So it's a thing that you always have to remind yourself and just be confident in.
And
You
do you document your communications, Patty? Do you document the signs you get? Do you document the telepathic communications? Do you write them down? Do you take pictures?
I've taken some pictures of signs and all. I have great, I'm great with the signs. I've had signs that would, as big as a billboard, smack you in the face. So I'm okay with the signs.
But the documentation of that is a concrete way to go back to your ego and say, do you fucking see this right here?
Yeah.
You are wrong and I am right. Shut up.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
it's the
Kathy and I both
telepathic
did
stuff,
that.
the stuff inside my head. But there were
Well-
times when I actually heard, not my children, but I've heard a voice.
Okay. And
know,
you may,
and, you know,
you
didn't
can
know
ask
who it
who it
was,
is.
but
Ask them.
I
Ask
never
them.
Patty,
found out.
And
Patty, I think it was Kathy that told me, and because I was always looking for the next sign, and I think it was Kathy that told me to stop saying signs and to say communications, and that was real helpful because I was always looking for the signs, and so now I'll see a sunflower or and it's a communication, so it was more building the relationship with him in spirit instead of always looking for a sign. So that was real helpful to me to make that switch. So it was, again, I wasn't looking for signs anymore. It was just a communication with my child. And it was different from what, it is different because he's in spirit. So that was just like a turning point for me. After that, I was able to okay, I wasn't going to get that big sign. And when I went back and document, because I do document, I remember some really big signs in the beginning. And so documenting does help too.
And when you call it communication, what you come to realize is that telepathy, signs, medium reading, dream visit, none of it is better than the other. It's all just ways it's like picking up a phone versus walking through the door versus texting versus video calling. It's all communication. And here's the thing, Patty, is like you have tamed your ego with the signs. When you get a sign, it's a sign. Now you tamed it there and it said, well, shit, what are we gonna get her next? Where are we gonna
Yeah.
get her on?
Yeah.
So now it's doing it with your telepathy. So like Kathy said, Kathy and I both kept extensive communication journals with our kids. We kept it, she kept it longer than me. I kept one for 2 years and it's a little bit exhausting, but she's right. When our egos would act up, we went back to that. We kept, like, I kept a spiral notebook. I would go back to it and I would read them and I'm like, there you go, ego. Like it's a lot of work. But if you want to do it, you have to put in the work. You know what I mean? And you're doing it. So just keep at it. Keep at it.
Patty,
You're right.
I journal my conversations with Alex as well. I have like journals upon journals at this point in time, to the point that the last time I had a reading, Rachel actually described the cover of one of the outside, like of the journal one of the journals I had. And what was really funny is when I need a new journal, I go to Barnes and Noble and I ask Alex to come with me and pick out a journal. So this was a situation where I walked into Barnes and Noble. I immediately saw this journal and knew it was the journal, but it was like $60. And so I was like, no, like I can't, I'm not going to pay $60 for a journal. Well, it was like a 20-minute conversation between Alex and I in my head, to the point where like he was yelling at me, just get this journal, Mom, get this journal. And I was saying, you're going crazy, Christine. This isn't really Alex. This is just your head, like doing funky stuff. And after 20 minutes, I finally got the journal and then walked out and was like, whoa, Alex, you are really loud. And then a year later, I have a reading with Rachel Pearson, and she asks me about the cover of the journal. Alex was showing her the cover of this journal. And I laughed and I said, yeah, there's a funny story to this one. So yeah, so that's been really helpful to me to document those conversations.
Absolutely. Documenting is really, it's so important. So I would go back to documenting, Kathy's right on the money with that.
Okay, I haven't done that. I haven't done these little conversations. Usually when I'm out walking the dog, I'm in a wooded area, and that's when I usually start talking to my kids. There's nobody
Well,
around. So,
so
I
then
can
when you
talk out
get
loud
home-
to them.
Yeah. So when you get home, whip out a journal and transcribe it, basically,
And it's basically just like, hey, what's going on? Or how do you like these trees? Or something really silly stuff.
No,
or what
but
do you think
that's
about
not
the
silly.
dog?
Yeah, but that's not silly. I want you to do this, and I want you to do it without judgment, because even with what you just said, your ego popped in. Did you hear your ego pop in and
Yeah,
take
I said,
over
oh, it's
what you were
silly.
saying?
Isn't
Yeah,
this silly? Yeah,
So
it's silly. I'm
instead,
walking here talking to myself.
right. So
That's what
instead,
I'm saying.
you're gonna, and I want you to name your ego. Like, mine's called Gritchity Bitch, but most people in class, we make them actually give it a name. We have one lady that hers is called Pippi. Another one is called, gosh, I can't remember, Veruca. We have a Veruca. Is that you, Rebecca? Are you Veruca? No. But so give it a name. So, and you have to watch when it slips in, because even when you just said that, literally, I just was like, and her ego just came in, because you were
It's
like,
there all the time.
there was judgment. So any lower vibration emotion comes from ego, judgment, shame, regret, all of that. That's all lower vibration earth emotion. Okay. So you have to become aware of it. This is also where your words have power. So if when you say it's silly, that's you undermining a connection with your child. That is not fucking silly. You're
right.
So
You're right.
you have to get into those nooks and crannies and those cracks and crevices, because it is a sneaky little snake, man, and it'll just slither on into where, that's
I
where
have
the
a
awareness
question.
comes in. Yeah.
Should I document what ego says to me as
I
well?
would. Yep. I
Yeah.
would when we do the ego taming class, we actually do an exercise where we, boy, they hated it too. Like I had I had those clients count the number of times in the day that their ego was talking.
Oh,
And they were all like, I lost count. I lost count. And I'm like, mm-hmm. So
yeah.
I would also take a few days and really, um, you know, count, count. Carry a pen with you, mark it on your wrist every time you have to redirect your ego. So you can see how it is actively in the driver's seat.
Mm,
And
Okay.
write down the things that ego is saying to you, Patty, because then you can logically counteract all of that. If your ego's over here saying, "Oh, these are just silly little conversations you're having in the woods, you think you're talking to your kids," and then you say over here, "But I did talk to my kids," and it's you use your truth to quiet your ego. And that's where it circles back to what Nikki was saying earlier about you have to really dig in and determine what your truth is. And once you have your truth, we have clients who write it down, write your truth on an index card and carry it in your pocket.
Which you
We
were
have
all supposed to have already done, by the way.
right? Carry that. We have ladies who did this class 3, 4 years ago who still carry their cards and they remind themselves of their truth. So start writing out your truth. You don't have to write your whole truth at one time, but start writing your truth on a card. Carry that with you. Pin another copy of it next to your bathroom mirror. Put it on the bottom of your computer screen, everywhere that you can see it every day, to visually remind yourself of what that truth is. And when your ego starts to creep in, remind yourself of that truth. And it's digging the neural
Oh,
pathways.
yeah, over and over and over and over. And like Kathy just
mhm.
said, that works on the physiologic part of digging the neural pathway. You know what I mean? So it's imperative. It's absolutely imperative. And isn't it funny? You know what the irony in this is? You're like, my ego says, my ego says. So your ego is perfectly fine with you having a literal conversation with it, but it's such a far reach that you can't talk to your kids and hear them talk to you. Like
Yeah, right?
it's always so mind-boggling to me what ego allows to be real and what it doesn't allow to be real. Anything to do with it, boy howdy, it's real. Like you can hear it talk to you, you can talk back to it, and it's a full-blown conversation. And that is real, but you don't have the ability to talk telepathically with your children. It's going to tell you that's not real. Like it's so ironic to me, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do
I have work to
do
do.
those you have work to do and do
Yeah.
those steps and see. And that doesn't mean that you can't grieve. You can still have a grief wave come, but this enables you to physically shift with intention, right?
Mhm.
So you can say, you know what, I've had enough of my ego telling me my kids are dead and I'm suffering and I've been crying for days. And then you sit down, you have a conversation with that ego
Mm,
and you shift.
mhm.
Yeah,
Well, thank you. Thank you
you're welcome.
for all the help from everybody too.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, Brenda.
So that one time when I was telling you that I had that teardrop when I was doing something on the computer for my husband, and I had that teardrop, I should have wrote that down on a book, right?
You can. Now you don't struggle terribly with ego. Here's the thing though. It you're not doing all of this so that you don't have grief waves. Eventually that's what happens. Like Kathy doesn't grieve a whole lot for Sophie. I 99% of the time I don't feel grief or mourning or anything, any sadness about Leaf anymore. But while you're moving through that, it's perfectly normal to have grief waves. It's perfectly you need those because you're literally releasing physical energy and like the energy being programmed to believe that they're dead. And you're also releasing the energy of the missing. So
I understand that, but I always keep asking for signs too. And it if I get anything, it's like far between. Like I haven't got nothing since that teardrop deal.
well, you probably have, because here's the deal. When you guys expect a sign to come a certain way and it doesn't come a certain way, you we have a tendency to say, well, I'm not getting anything. I'm going to tell you right now, your children in spirit is going to expand your language of spirit. So you can start out saying, I want this sign, and they may give it to you. Then they may stop because they're done playing that game. You guys can practice on your own. It's spirit is always the first thought in before ego kicks in. So one of the things that we've done in classes is ask your kid for a sign, and the first thing that comes into your mind, write it down. And then, like, what are you going to show me this week? Cats. So I would write down cats, and then every single cat I see, if I see the word cat, if I see a person named cat, if I see a cat walk in front of me, if I see a cat bumper sticker, if I see a cat commercial, if somebody brings me cat food, I say, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And that opens up your awareness. They're going to expand your language. So it's probably not that you're not getting anything, Brenda. It's probably that you're not aware of what you're getting. So now I can have the most simple thing, like, when Kat and I were in the car, the license plate in front of us said LBF. There's LBF 91. I know enough now, 7 years out, that Leaf likes to send L and F's together, or he'll send B and L's together, or he'll send BLEs, and he sends 9s. So anything to do with that, I'm past saying, oh, I'm reaching. I'm just like, hey, buddy, I'm glad you're on the road with me today. So you discount nothing. You could be listening to a song and there could be 3 words in that song that was a message from your kid, but because you're not aware that that is the message, you're discounting it and you're saying they're not sending it. They're always moving to us and through us. Always. It's our
And the more
of that.
signs you claim, the more signs you get.
I made a mistake too when I was going through all them health tests and everything. I think he was trying to get my aunt to get a hold of me because he clocked me in the head with the picture. So I forgot about that one.
And see, just think about that for a second. The more signs you claim, the more signs you get. So don't discount them. If you think for even a nanosecond that something is a sign, claim it and thank your child for it.
Yep.
And you'll get more.
Okay.
It's supply and demand.
There are no mistakes. There's only learning. So, you extend grace to yourself there.
Okay.
Okay. Where'd Kimberly Woodruff go? Because Kim, are you still on with us? Read what you wrote in the chat, because I'm going to address that.
She's
I'm
muted.
muted. You're muted, Kim.
No, Kim's muted.
I'm like, I'm muted.
Why does it take something so horrific like losing a child to be aware of all this stuff that almost seems like our lives would have been so much better early on if we knew? I actually think my son was more aware than I was before he before he left the physical world.
He may have been. Some of the kids were. Some of them weren't consciously aware, but we can look back and see that they were aware, even though they didn't know it. Why is that? Number one, so I'm going to tell you this, your words have power. So every time you say this child loss is horrific, you're adding pain onto yourself. Use your words wisely. Stop calling it horrific. We all know it's very painful. We all know that in the physical realm that it feels like living death. But if you keep reiterating that to yourself, that's what you're programming your brain to. And it's going to be real damn hard to dig out of that neural pathway and get to a place of peace. So that's the first thing I'm going to say about it. Second thing is, I believe in soul contracts. So are there people that come into awareness and awakening without child loss? Absolutely there are. But everybody has some kind of devastating experience or some kind of experience that brings them to it. Because most people don't just live in the remembering of their spirit. Earth is the realm that we come to learn. We come to evolve. We come to grow. We come to step further into our spirit, right? So what did I say earlier, guys, that I told y'all to write down? your children left body, or your children went to be in spirit to lead you to your own spirit while you're in physical. I said it in a different way. But for me, that is my truth. That is the basis of it. Leaf left body to lead Omri to her true self in spirit while she's in physical, to lead me to my true self in spirit while I'm in physical, so that I can help lead you to your true spirit while you're in physical, right? So for me, that's the end all be all. If you get into your truth far enough, Kim, like, I no longer think that child loss is horrific. I can say that 100%. Do you know why? Because to me, there has been no end. We will live another life together 1,000 different times. So when I began to shift into that, it became less horrific. The problem is that we're in grief. The ego is very protective of grief, very protective of pain. So I can remember the first time I said, Leaf was telling me all is as it should be. This isn't that big of a deal, Mom. And I was like, yeah, you son of a bitch. Like, it's, easier for you to say you're a spirit and I'm down here in physical. But as I kept growing and learning, I came to understand that he was right. And I came to understand what the Abraham energies were saying when they're like, y'all making this a big damn deal, and it is not that big of a damn deal. You were in that body for a blip in time of a million lives. When I came into that as my truth and I began to live it, it was no longer a horrific ordeal. I now look at my grief journey, and Kim, I started out just like all of you. I wanted to die. I wanted to kill Omri and then kill myself. I literally felt like my insides were trying to bust out of my skin. I was in so much pain. I didn't eat for 8 months. I rarely showered. Like, I was completely devastated. And now when I look back on my journey, I don't describe my journey as horrific. It's been the most beautiful fucking transcendent thing that I could have ever experienced in this lifetime. And it's not, it sounds terrible. It sounds so fucking terrible. But because of where I'm at now, because of the truth that I've lived in daily, because I don't live in the lack of Leaf. I don't live in the loss of Leaf. I live in his presence, and I live in my truth that there has been no end. And I live in my truth that we will do this 1,000 more times, because basically all we did was write a movie script, and we came down and we lived it out. And then we're going to write another one. Then we're going to write another one. And so when I live in that truth, this is a blip. It's not horrific to me anymore. And it's lending me learning that I signed up for, so that I could live in a freedom and a light and a reality that I never fucking would have known existed. Like, I have full body chills right now. And I do. You know what, Kim? Before Leaf left body, my whole teenage life, my whole adult life, I was diagnosed with chronic depression. I was diagnosed with this. I always had suicidal ideation. You know what? After I found my healing, I have experienced an emotional freedom that I absolutely 100% know I never would have discovered without this experience. I know that. And that is possible for all of us if we choose to step into it. It's terrifying to step into. It's terrifying to step into. But that's the purpose for me. When Kathy and I do classes, and when I work with private clients, Racheka's done this, and Angie's done this. Kim, you may have done it too. I've asked all of them to sit down and write down the gifts of what this has brought. And some of them weren't real happy with that assignment, I will tell you right now. But when you can start to look at the gifts, you start to find the purpose. Kim, if Austin hadn't left body, and maybe he was living across country, and you went through this, you would still be sitting at home, isolated and alone. But instead, you're here surrounded by a community of women that not only understand what you're going through, but we're willing to extend our energy and love you. So you're not alone in this. That's a gift. That's a gift of him leaving body, is your community. You know, you going to Warrior Week last year. That was a gift of him leaving body. So when you start to look at the gifts, write this down. When you start to look at the gifts, you start to find the purpose. And when you start to find the purpose, it becomes less horrific because it's not been in vain and there's been no end. That again is why it's so imperative that you guys really dig in and find your truth. Like that's part of my truth. This is literally a blink of an eye. There is no such thing. There's no such thing as time. That's an ego, man-made social construct. So when Omri, it's in your closet. Sorry. When you look at it that way, like that's why I tell you guys, stop saying I'm another day closer. I'm another day closer. Stop doing that, because when you get back to spirit, you're gonna look at this and you're gonna be like, that was literally like a blink. And then you're gonna sit down, you're gonna write out your next script, and maybe you're gonna go early, and maybe he's gonna be the mom, and maybe he's gonna learn. You know what I mean? Leaf actually told me that. I accidentally, a lot of you guys have heard this story, but I accidentally slipped into meditation one day. I was sitting out in his pickup, still in very, very deep grief. I went and sat in his pickup, and I was putting my hands on the steering wheel because that's where his hands had been. And I was putting my fingers on the shifter knob because that's where his fingers had been. I was in all of his clothes. I had his socks on, I had his hoodie on, I had his beanie on, I had his ashes around my neck. You know, I think I even had his OU gloves on at that point. And I was sitting in his pickup, and it was it was warm inside the pickup, but it was cold outside. Like the sun was warming the cab of the pickup. And I was watching this big, huge tree in my parents' yard, and everybody else was gone. They were working, and I was sitting at home, you know, in my almost catatonic state at that point. When everybody was gone, I would just sit and stare at stuff for hours. And I slipped into meditation. I didn't even know that's what I was doing, but the tree started swaying in unison with some birds that were swooping, and it was just a whole surreal thing that happened. And I heard Leaf say to me, "Mom, we've done this before. You were the child and I was the parent, and you took an early exit, and we decided this time that you were going to learn what I learned last time." And I popped out of it, and I was like, what? That was the first time I actually had heard him very audibly, very clearly. And I was like, I popped out, and I'm like, I'm losing my fucking mind. Like, where's everybody at? Because I really think I need to go be committed. And so I called a mentor that I had been working with, and I said, and this is very early on, called a mentor that I've been working with. I said, this is just what happened. I don't know what he's talking about. Am I going crazy? And she said, no, Nikki, number one, you just came into awareness of your stop of your telepathic link. The second thing she said, he's talking to you about soul contract. And I said, what's that? She said, you need to look it up. You need to figure it out. And I said, okay. And so that's when I started digging into that part of my truth. And it fit for me. And I researched it. And you know, I was pissed too. I was like, how? Sorry, I'm walking around looking for toilet paper for Omri. I was pissed. I was like, why would I write this in? I would never write this in. Of course, that's because my ego was saying that, right? I know where nothing's at in this house. My ego was saying that. And my ego didn't understand a soul contract and didn't want to fathom the fact that I would write in this horrific, devastatingly painful experience, right? But the more I researched, the more it made sense to me. So that's why I'm saying you have to get into your truth. Without a really deep, profound truth, Kim, this is always going to feel horrific, and it's always going to feel needless, and it's always going to feel unpurposeful. And if you allow it, I mean, how many of you here are already experiencing the divine purpose and beauty in this experience? Raise your hand. Christina's. Doesn't have to be consistent, Rebecca. I know you've had moments though. She's like,
well, I was gonna say everything but beautiful. I mean, I've seen the purpose, but I haven't gotten to the beautiful part yet. But
Well,
I've seen a lot of gifts, and I almost feel like I was preparing for this for my whole life.
Yeah.
I mean, just looking back experiences and, you know,
You start to put these pieces of a puzzle together. You look back and you're like, oh, that makes
Yeah.
sense now.
and so I don't know. So
Well,
I
and-
find the
and-
gifts. I find the gifts, but
Well, and I will tell you, not everybody is going to get to where they're like, it's beautiful. Like, I don't expect y'all to get there.
No, and I do.
know?
There's such a piece, you know, that came with his passing because he suffered a lot, but I had to work on my ego because my ego was saying, how can you be at such peace? You know,
Right.
I mean, I still had the
Right.
grief and I still had the missing, but there just was, because he wasn't happy, and if he wasn't happy, I wasn't happy.
Right.
So there was just a peace, and a knowing. So I think I already, you know, I worked for hospice, and so I knew all the
Mhm.
stages of grief and everything. So I wasn't, it's not that I didn't grieve, it's I was able to want healing faster, I guess. That's, you know,
Right.
because the first Christmas program, he passed in March, and, you know, so it wasn't even a year yet. And so
Right.
I was
How
ready
How
to,
many years is this for you, Rebecca? For in the program?
it's 3 years.
3 years. Okay.
3 years.
And you guys have to remember too, like Rebecca is also like, she's taken damn near every class, some of them twice. She does all, but like, she's immersed herself in the work. So the more you, and I'm not saying with me and Kathy, I don't care who you do it with, I don't care how you do it, who you go to whoever it resonates with you with, but do the work and the perspective shift. It's called it's called a paradigm shift, Kim.
Yes.
Right? It's called a paradigm shift. So it's possible. It's possible. We'll all have it to different layers and levels. And I believe that's because, like, Kim, maybe you haven't done this as many times in past lives as I have done. I truly believe I've probably done this hundreds of times now. Right? Maybe you've only done it 50 times and I've done it 100 times. So you're going to have a certain amount of growth with it. And it's going to look different than the amount of growth I have because I've done it before. You know what I mean? So, it's for me, my truth is that it happens to lead us back to self, back to home, back to the truth of who we actually are when we're out of these bodies, and how to encompass that while we're in these bodies. That's my truth. You have to figure out what your truth is. And it takes a lot of ego taming, and it takes a lot of truth seeking, and it takes a lot of, you know, dabbling in a million different things. I have so much information now in my brain that thank God for Kathy, because I've forgotten half of what I'm supposed to teach, and she picks up where I have forgotten, and I pick up where she's forgotten. And it's so much information, and it's this amazing otherworldly non-physical information that we never would have tapped into had this experience not been written in.
And you have to be willing to go down the rabbit hole. You have to be, if you start watching a video on YouTube and it mentions something, and you're not really sure what that is, and you go over to Google and you look up that something, and it leads you to another something, you got to be willing to go down the rabbit hole for a little bit. And you'll get to a point where you'll be like, yeah, that really doesn't work for me. So discard that and go down a different tunnel. Because, you know, a rabbit hole is not one straight hole. A rabbit warren is a bunch of interconnected tunnels, and it's all connected. And you may get to the very same point that Nikki and I have gotten to, but you may go in a different direction than we went from the beginning. But the ego taming is really the big part, because like Nikki, I ended up with a medium that we used to work with, having a past life regression. She was trying to help me get over this perceived meditation hurdle that I had. and the session, the guided meditation that I was doing with her turned into a past life regression that she didn't expect to do that either, but spirit put it all in both of us. And it's one of the most profound experiences I've ever had in my entire life. And I found out that my mother in this lifetime was one of several people who was responsible for my physical death in a previous lifetime. And Sophie was my mother in that lifetime, and I died. So I had, the same past life experience as Nikki, that Sophie and I have done this before. We've changed places before. My husband was in my previous lives, and that put me down a different tunnel for a little while. And you have to be willing to explore. The same as with the divination tools. If the oracle cards don't speak to you, pick up the pendulum. If the pendulum doesn't work for you, try dowsing rods. Try Patty's meditating when she's walking her dog and talking to her kids in the woods. That's called walking meditation. Meditation doesn't have to be sitting on a pillow with your fingers together going om. There are all kinds of different meditations. So you have to try a little bit of this, try a little bit of that. You might put things together that don't necessarily go together, but they work for you in your connection and in your journey.
And you have to be willing to step out of your comfort zone and out of your box. You guys have heard me say, somebody literally could have told me, Kim, to run around my block naked and do cartwheels, fully naked in the freezing cold. And if I thought it would heal me, I would have been doing it. They could have told me to eat dog poop. And if I thought it was going to take away my pain, I would have done it. Like, I was willing to do anything and everything, at least try it. And when you do that, you find what resonates with you, right? I've learned from a lot of different sources and a lot of different people. And some of it, I'm like, yeah, I can take about 2 pieces away from that, but the rest is meant for somebody else. That's why when I post stuff, I will sometimes say, I don't probably say it enough, but like, take what resonates with you, because that's what you're supposed to take in at that time. Stuff that I say, stuff that I said when Rebecca was brand new probably pissed her off up one side down the other, because she was not ready to receive that information. As she went through more healing, then she was like, oh, okay, I get that now, So you have to be willing to step outside your box. And it's really hard, especially if you are a very social program person. You know what I mean? I've always been kind of eccentric and a little rebellious. I am a road less traveled girl, and it has not always served me well. But so it wasn't like a huge stretch for me to be like, I'm going to try a medium reading. I'm going to learn a pendulum. I'm going to learn, oracle cards. I'm going to learn this. I'm going to learn how to meditate. I'm going to, I used to walk around my house going, just because I knew it was the universal sound and it raised my vibration. Kim, one of the truths I came into, my kids are named Omri Elliott, and my son is named Bobby Leaf. So his initials are literally B Leaf. And the first sound in her name is which is the universal sound. So now I say, I'm like, my kids named themselves before I ever conceived them. Like, knowing where I'm at and what I do now, it's a little bit uncanny for my kids to be and be Leaf. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't plan that shit. I'm not that profound. So you got to seek your truth, and you got to try different stuff, and you have to immerse yourself in it, because the more consistently you do it, the faster you're going to heal. And that's where the pain starts to dissipate, and you can say, this is just an experience in this lifetime. It doesn't have to define who I am, and it doesn't have to be horrific. I can make it into something beautiful. Does that answer? I know that was a long tangent I went on, girl. Does that make sense?
And even just start with one teeny tiny step, Kim. When you think that thought, instead of saying, why did this horrific thing have to happen to me? Say, why did this monumental thing have to happen to me? Just change one. What's the one tiny baby step that you can change?
Mhm.
You don't have to change everything at once, just one
Mm-mm.
tiny baby step. Change out the word horrific for monumental, giant.
I love that.
You know, yeah.
That's perfect because your ego, when you don't say horrific, your ego feels like your trauma's invalidated, is what's happening, and the ego gets real defensive and protective. So what Kathy's offering with a different word, it doesn't invalidate it. Like, and I don't ever want you guys to feel like I'm invalidating my experience, because my experience has been shattering. That's literally the only word for it. Omni's experience has been shattering. My experience has been shattering. I've come to a place where I know that it no longer invalidates my shattering, because my shattering had purpose. Right? So find the purpose in it. And it doesn't have to be huge purpose. You know, Kathy's whole deal could have been the purpose for Jules to leave Body so that she could comfort her friend after her dad left Body because he came to her. It could be that you have become more giving. It could be that you are more forgiving of yourself and you extend yourself grace. It could be that you've learned boundaries. It's really probably all of the above, quite honestly. It's leading you home to self while you're in Body. Does that answer your question, Kim? Okay. Do you have anything to add or any more questions regarding it? Did it make sense? She's like, damn, I asked one question, I get a 15-minute spiel on it. That's how we do. Great question. Great question. And it's the single most asked question in this journey. How many of you asked that? Why?
Why me?
Okay,
Why
Christine.
not me?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying why me, say why not me? Why not me?
Yeah.
I'm badass enough to handle this and help other people through it. Why not me?
That's why Leaf brought me the word warrior. That is why he brought it, because we are badass enough to fucking handle this and to transcend it. That is why. That is why each and every one of you are in this program and in this group, because you signed up for the advanced course down here and you're going to rise to the fucking challenge. Warriors unite.
I have to say, Nikki, it's not freaking me out, but this whole time Jules has been messing with my hair.
Yeah, they were just doing me a little bit ago. I was like, okay, I got you.
I don't know if you noticed, I was like, Jules, please, I can't even pay attention.
No, I look like I have fleas when we do Zooms because Sophie is constantly in my head the whole
I've
time.
never
I'm like,
had that
I promise
before.
I don't have bugs.
I know,
Yep,
I'm saying to myself, they're probably watching me, itching my head, but she's been messing with me this whole time.
Yep, that's them. And Leaf was even doing it to me right here very distinctively, and he hasn't done that in 4 years. You know,
She's
so
driving me nuts.
he's like, they're like, preach it, get on that soapbox.
No, she's like, it's about time, Mom, about time.
So yeah, and that's the thing. So like Kathy could very well say, oh, I must have dry scalp. I need to get some head and shoulders. My head's really itchy tonight. But instead, she put her ego aside and she stepped into her spiritual knowing. She's like, Jules, get the hell out my hair. These women are going to think I have fleas. That's the difference right there. Everything can be logically explained away if your ego's in charge. Everything can. But when you step into spirit, nothing can. Nothing can be explained away. All right. Anybody else? No?
I heard a hey before when we were in doing this group, and I'm the only one here, so I know who that was. I have no doubt.
You're not the only one there anymore.
Yeah, I'm like surrounded, but my sons who are in body are not in the house. Let's put it that way. But Mikey is definitely. And
Yeah,
I don't even question it anymore. Like, even like at this point in my healing journey, Mikey was 5 years in November 11/11, right? And so my son Walt was like, you know, we were talking and he's like, yeah, my brother's dead. And I'm like, well, he's the most lively dead person I've ever experienced in my entire life. And he's
exactly.
like, well, yeah, right. He is. He's really a lively. He's not really dead. And I'm like, yeah, well, you know. So it
Yeah,
comes to full circle where it's contagious. Like your healing is contagious. Not only grief is contagious, but your healing is contagious.
absolutely is. Collective energy is powerful and it can be positive or negative. You know,
Yeah,
it is. And
big
there are
time.
ripples. There are ripples upon ripples. And these, you know, embodied children, the siblings, they take it in by osmosis. I will tell you that right now. They really
Oh,
do. It
yes.
may be slow, but they do take it in. They do. You know,
I can
and
firsthand tell you that's truth.
and I will tell you this, for those of you that don't have siblings and embodied children, if all of your children have left body, or if your only child has left body, Kathy and I have discussed this extensively. The grass isn't always greener. There is a lot of stuff, and Kathy's seen it firsthand with me and Omri, that there's a whole different layer of shit you got to go through when you have a kid that you have to heal too, that you have to help heal too. So, like Kathy has literally said to me sometimes, "Damn, Nikki, sometimes your journey makes me glad that Sophie was my only kid." And I'm like, "Oh, you're fine," you know. But Omri, you know, Omri does really well with working on herself for the most part, but it's been tumultuous at times because I've navigated a teenager, you know, into adulthood who had severe trauma, severe grief. So don't get trapped in the societal programming of the competition. Like, well, yeah, Nikki, but you still have a child on earth, because there are nuances to every journey that make it difficult. Make it difficult. That's probably one of the most profound things that Kathy and I discussed early on, because we were having a lot of people saying, well, it was my only child, it was my only child. And Kathy was able to stand up and say, you know what? It was my only child too. And I've seen both sides of it, because, you know, my best friend deals with the other side of it and tells me about it. And we have a very strong mutual respect for each other with both of our journeys, and being able to see the good and the bad about both sides of that coin. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, because we went through a lot of hell before we got here. I'll tell you.
well,
Sure wasn't easy.
got to walk through the fire, get to the light, got to go through the darkness. The
There
only
are
way out is through. Yeah,
there are gifts. There are gifts. So
there are
everybody
gifts.
hang in there.
Yeah, just keep going. And you rest when you need to rest, right? Extend yourself that much grace to rest when you need to rest. So,
Exactly.
all right. Does anybody else have anything? I'm gonna have Kathy pull the card. I do want you guys to close your own energy out tonight, simply because I'm tapped and I don't know how much bandwidth I have to hold the collective flow tonight for closing. And I hate to do that to you guys, but I also don't want to send out my wonky, unbalanced, exhausted crap tonight, you know? So after Kathy does her card, when we get off, please, please, please do your cord cutting, your surrounding protecting, and your calling power back. I told Kathy I felt terrible all week that I haven't, because usually during the holiday program, you guys know that have taken it, like I'm on every day sharing something, you know, cheering you on, and I haven't been able to do that. So I apologize. As we get at least everything over to this house, I will do better at it. I promise. So I've had to really, Kathy's had to chew my butt a few times about me extending myself grace, that right, you know, that I can only do so much right now. So I ask y'all to bear with me while I, you know, get the rest of apparently way too much shit that I own. And I don't even know how that happened because I came to Florida with literally nothing. So, um, but yeah. So Kathy, take it away.
Okay, and before I draw the card, I did post a thread in the group where everybody can put in your address if you're participating in the Kiddo Santa Exchange. And if for some reason your name is different than the name you use on Facebook, because some people use different names, put your name so the mailman will know who's the package is supposed to go to. Okay, and tonight I'm going to draw from the Rainbow Warrior Activation deck. Both because I like this deck and because it had been misplaced for a little while, and Sophie brought it to my attention today where I had misplaced it, and I was able to get it back out. So I'm going to draw from that deck tonight, and we'll see what we get.
And Kathy, that's not fair. Dakota loves getting mail.
Well, we can sign it to Dakota. Okay, tonight is number 52, and this is, hang on, let me unblur. That's kind of a purple tree of life looking card. So let me see. These cards they just have numbers on them. Okay. This card is winter, and the keywords are frozen, rest, hibernation, possibilities, prime, trust, and security. What happens in the primary moments of any new cycle will be indicative of the rest of it. Trusting that initial phase sets a pace and a flow forward that allows for the most harmonious path possible toward the ordained accomplishment. A period of rest, repose, and reflection creates the space needed for all aspects of the self to align one's internal environment with one's external circumstances. Receiving this card brings to your attention the need for solidarity and the importance of a plan when moving forward with the current situation or perspective. Resting at this time is not laziness. It's honoring the deepest call of the self to unify and consolidate in preparation to begin again. So, okay, that's not appropriate at all, is it? Right? Not even a little bit. Holy crap. It's always spot on. I mean, how much more could the card have summed up what we talked about tonight? You know, it's unifying your ego and your spiritual self. It's resting when you need to. It's becoming whole after what happened to us.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll post that in the group. I'll post the picture and the little blurb in the group.
So spot on. So I'm going to post, in the next few days, I'm going to post an assignment for you guys to work on and try. Because I want you to have active, palpable tools to try and steps to take. If you haven't looked at some of the things I posted week before last and tried those, please do those. I post them for a reason. You're here to heal. You got to use the tools. You have to step outside the box and use them. And that doesn't mean they're a one-off. If you use something and it worked for you, you put it in your toolbox to take out every few days and use, every week to use. Like that's how you build your healing toolbox. There's something else I also, can you tell I'm like all over the map? I'm like, what am I saying? I just went in and posted for Zoom takeaways for tonight. So if you guys will put in comments there. And Kathy or one will be messaging you guys with who you're going to be Secret Santa, Spirit Kiddo Secret Santa for. We'll get that done. If you have any questions about how to do that and go shopping with them, ask us, let us know. We'll give you a kind of a process to go through if you need it. And it's okay if you do need it. It's okay if you don't need it. So, that's all I've got. Does anybody else
And
have
don't forget,
anything?
don't
Oh.
forget to mark your calendars for Sunday at 12:30 is our gallery readings with Kelly White. And there is a possibility that we'll have a super special guest come with her. So cross your fingers, talk to your kids, ask them to work it out. And we could potentially have James Van Prague to give a group reading along with Kelly. And for a group of our size, that is monumental. That's an incredible experience for a group as small as ours, to have James
Yeah.
and Kelly.
Having said that, we don't know if James is coming on or not. I have not heard back from Kelly. When Kelly comes in every year, James came in one year with Kelly, and she asked me when I first asked her when I was planning the program, which was months ago. She said, Nikki, how would you feel if James came in with me? I said, that would be amazing. She said, I'll ask him and see how he feels about it. I have not spoken to Kelly since we got her date lined out, and her and I have not spoken. So it will literally be a surprise for me too. So I don't know if it's going to happen, but there is a potential that it will happen. Either way, Kelly is phenomenal as well. So it's sure to be a great gallery reading. And Kelly usually will go through and do a mini reading for every person there. Like she'll work off the cards and she'll go through and do a mini reading for everybody there. So it's going to be a it'll be a good one either way. Either way. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Does anybody have anything before we sign off? All right, ladies. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being patient with me. Thank you, Kathy. Poor Kathy. I've just piled on her all this shit she has to do for me since I'm tied up, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. So thank you, Kathy. And
Good night, everybody.
good night. We will see you Sunday, ladies.
All right.
Good night, guys.
Good
Take
night,
care.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.